I was always interested in the question, sometimes more interested in the question than in the answer. Torah was very central in our home. The sanctity of the Sefer was clear, but in terms of my education, it was stultifying. My parents were not educated. They belonged to what was called the lost generation in the United States. My father had a melamed come to the house until he was bar mitzvah. My mother didn't even have that. And my own Torah education wasn't focused either on mastery of texts or on questioning. I landed in college. I decided, after a lot of soul searching, that I was going to go to Stern. Out of my class of around 90 girls, 2 signed up for Gemara, I and a friend. When I finished college, I needed to make decisions about my direction in life. I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to learn Torah, and I knew that as a woman, there was no place in the world for me. Not in America, not in Israel. There was no Beit Midrash at that time for women. I was approached by a group of young women who were attending classes I was giving in my neighborhood. The heartbreaking part was when they told me, we're devastated. How come our male colleagues from Princeton have found a place for themselves and we don't have a place that respects us as thinking, intelligent women? And I really identified with them. I identified because I didn't have a place for myself, and they said, start a school for us. So I said to myself, okay, it's time to roll up your sleeves. I found it was very hard. People were supporting an idea, but not with the funds that were needed. I was flying east from LA to Boston with a very heavy heart because someone had given me $5,000, and that was the biggest gift I had gotten. I thought to myself, I have a responsibility to this person. I sold her a dream. I told her we're going to start a school for women, which is going to open the highest reaches of Torah learning to women. And I didn't see how I was going to do it, and I felt to myself, how can I do this? Got off the plane, and Dan Palisar met me, and Dan said to me, you know that proposal we put in together to the Jewish Agency? Well, we got funded. I found rabbis very, very quickly who were prepared to become part of Nishmat. You believe heart and soul in what you're doing, you just keep going, you plow ahead. My marriage was a gift of almost 50 years. A normal couple raising children. When we got up in the morning, we would say Birkat HaTorah, the blessing over Torah study, right away, because we wanted to talk to each other. I would often wake up with a question, or he would wake up after he was thinking about something, mulling about something. The conversation around the table very much focused on Torah. Our family has had some hard knocks. Everybody knows about that. You keep going. We're Jews. That's what we do. We keep going. I think there's a special climate here in Israel in more ways that we can possibly imagine. There's an optimism in Israel. We risk our lives for the country, sending our children to the army, traveling certain roads in this country. It isn't simple. It can sometimes be raw, but there's an awareness that I'm doing this for a reason. Nishmat couldn't have arisen elsewhere. This is where the story of the Jewish people is happening. We have women of different ages, of different backgrounds, Israeli students for overseas students. We have the Institute, which is training Yoatzot Halakha, and now fertility counselors. We have a research institute, which is really something path-breaking. Women creating responsa literature on bookshelves, which for 1,000 years have had not a woman amongst them. And now this is coming out of Nishmat. You have women not yet Jewish who are coming in order to learn more about Judaism and make choices about their future. It's all part of an incredible community that's united by an ideology of study, of spirit and of securing the Jewish future. We're living in prophecies which are being fulfilled. I believe the spirit of our people has been passed from generation to generation by women. The mother in the home passes on so much of the legacy of Judaism to her children. We started our program for Ethiopian Israelis, and I thought to myself, you can't just give Jewish education. You've got to give them also the keys to moving ahead in Israel, because otherwise they'll have a Torah education, but what are they going to do with their lives? We have a marvelous advancement program, pushing them as far as they could go. And through the years, we found the key. It's giving them pride in their Ethiopian heritage by placing central emphasis upon Ethiopian Jewish heritage studies. That's what gives the girls faith in themselves. That enables them to assert themselves. They learn about their heritage. We send them home to their parents with questionnaires, and that's when the generations bond together. And stories come out, there's laughter, and there are a lot of tears. Sometimes our students discover that they had siblings who died on the journey to Israel through the Sudan. If you ask me, what's the magic? They needed to believe in themselves. This year at Nishmat surprised me. We were in the pandemic. The gates were closed. We couldn't go in and out of campus. You had a screen between yourself and the students. Now, try to imagine speaking about something meaningful to the students. You would think to yourself the year had to be catastrophic. And the answer is the year was incredible. Maybe the best year at Nishmat. Something happened with the students. They found ways on campus to exercise, to dance, to sing, to play music, to talk. The concentration on limud Torah and Torah learning was exceptional. Sometimes people think of me as a revolutionary. Sometimes people would like to see things moving more quickly. You know, we're a religion which is dynamic. Life is dynamic. Change occurs all the time, and we live during a period of change. But there needs to be a rhyme and reason for change. There needs to be a maintaining of the melody of Judaism so that people feel comfortable. A balance needs to be struck. So I always tell my students, I like to be in the consensus. I don't mind moving the consensus, but I like to stay within the consensus. I think in my work that we've demonstrated to the world that you can bring into Jewish life something that never existed previously. You can make change in a way that profoundly affects people's lives and betters people's lives, and still you can move the consensus to be there together with you. It's a delicate process. What's very strong in my mind is to keep the community together. I have another mountain which I want to scale, and that is leaving the school in the hands of the community. We're building a residence tower for married students. Why is that so important to me? For me, that is securing the legacy. You have a community which is a lasting community. I want the women scholars to be able to marry, to build families. I don't want them to have to leave Jerusalem because the rents are skyrocketing and there's no way they could possibly sustain themselves and keep studying with us. As a community, that means is that the student who comes to Nishmat even for 1 year She becomes part of a pulsating, a living community in which the values are lived, the spirit is there, the devotion to Jewish life is there, the sense of a mission is there. And that's what I believe my work is about. A student who comes to us knows that there's a community that she can keep coming back to. There's a reference point. There's a world that she belongs to. And that world doesn't change. That world is constant, and it's unified by values, by devotion to Jewish life, by the spirit, by the higher Torah learning. It's all about creating those who are going to hold and pass on the spirit of Judaism.
First time I came to Israel, I was 14 years old. And it was, to me, the most game-changing experience of my life when I realized that we are back in our Jewish country after thousands of years of exile. This was an incredible moment to be a Jew in history. And I wanted to be that, ambassador for Jerusalem in the world. And that's really what I do most of the time. My name is Fleur Hassan Nahum. I'm one of the deputy mayors of Jerusalem. I'm a proud graduate of Nishmat. I am originally from Gibraltar. Gibraltar is a religious community, and I had a religious education. But what was missing for me from my upbringing in Gibraltar were female mentors. That was definitely missing. Certainly not in the political field. I mean, I come from a political family. My father was a head of state in Gibraltar for many years, but I really didn't have that many female role models. In Gibraltar, every time I asked a hard question, they'd either kick me out of the room, I'm not joking, they would, and they'd say to me, "You ask too many questions." Judaism is about exploring and asking questions. That's the essence of our faith. And somehow I was the troublemaker in the community that I came from. I was looking for a program that would be significant for me, that could give me some real tools, intellectual thought, and everybody said to me, the smart girls go to Nishmat. And so when I came to Nishmat, it really was my first experience with female spiritual mentors and leaders that I could really kind of attach myself to and say, okay, now I feel at home. Spiritually, I feel at home here because they get me. They get the fact that I want to know more. They get the fact that I ask hard questions and that we can learn about the answers. I think one of the biggest challenges of Judaism today is the women's issues. And this is why Nishmat is so important. All the religion and state issues of the state of Israel somehow always revolve around the status of women. Whether it's divorce, whether it's female leadership in the religious space, whether it's even, isolation of women in the public space. A society is judged by their treatment of women. I see it in politics every day. The moment a woman is at the table discussing any issue that a society faces, the decisions are always going to be better. And it's the same in halachic thought and commentary. If a woman's perspective is there, it's not just women's issues. It's not just gitin and mikveh and everything else. Those are extremely important, but it's way beyond that. It's the woman's perspective that leadership needs in any realm, especially in the religious realm. And that is why what goes on in Nishmat is so important, because Nishmat is in the front lines of women intellectual thought. The halachic expertise there from a female's perspective is unique. Nishmat has the intellectual and spiritual chops to say you're wrong. And we need that because that is our arsenal towards a more equal society, because it has to come from the religious female leadership in this country, from the Orthodox female religious leadership in this country. it's very easy to dismiss women when it's not coming from the Orthodox camp. When it comes from the Orthodox camp, and when it comes from intellectual thought in the Orthodox camp, it's much harder for them to dismiss our voices. Because of the training that I received, Nishmat gave me the confidence to push back with the halachic tools that I needed to fight misconceptions about the status of women in many different fields. And that's why I'm a proud graduate and a big supporter of the work of Nishmat. To me, an investment in Nishmat is an investment in the future of the Jewish people.
The Gemara in Masechet Sota tells a very simple mashal that a person's walking at night in a forest and there are thorns that they're afraid of stepping on and there are wild animals that they're afraid are hunting them and they don't even know if they're on the right path. The Talmud uses the metaphor of sun rising to the Torah. That just shines light on the world all around you. It gives you insight into where you are. You can learn the mitzvot, you can learn the Talmud, and you can get a lot of insight into how to live your life. You can get a lot of insight into what the bigger picture is, but it's ultimately not going to solve the problem of are you on the right path. For that, you need Parshat Drachim. You need to face a crossroads in your life. You have to enter the picture and stand there and decide, who am I? Nishmat has always urged us to integrate the many different sides of the learning, that it's a heavy emphasis on skills and on mastering texts, but at the same time always an engaging of the deeper questions of who am I, why is this so important, and looking for real answers and real meaning in your life. My name is Josh Weisberg. I've been at Nishmat for I think 22 years. I teach Talmud and Midrash and Chassidus. In addition to being in Nishmat, I'm a father. I have 8 kids, married to Chana Jenny. I grew up in a small town called Kingston, Ontario. After I graduated high school, I came to Israel, spent a year on kibbutz, and I just fell in love with the country. Spoke to something very deep in myself that Canada had never spoken to. I came to Jerusalem after a couple of years to study and really just started loving a world of the mind that challenges your soul and your personality. I come from a family of everyone's a teacher. My brother and my sister are both my parents. And it just seemed like since I was young, the most meaningful thing I could do with my life. Just to help students discover themselves through what they're studying, integrating law and storytelling and ethics, spiritual search. It's sometimes hard to remember this, but 30 years ago, the number of Orthodox women in Israel who really had any real sense of what Talmud was or what Jewish thought was in a deep way was almost none. And today, every year, I have 100 students immerse themselves in Torah for a full year, ask the questions they want to ask, discover a whole new language that they didn't have before. The women at Nishmat are not competitive with one another about their learning. It's the most learning Lishma I've ever encountered. They're just there because they want to learn, and they want the learning to be deeply relevant to them, to their lives. That's why they're there. You have to see it. They take a year off in their life. They're busy. They want to go to college. They want to get married. They want to start life in that sense. And they take a year and they just simply immerse. They just come into the world of Torah. And it's work. Getting up in the morning and immersing yourself in a page of Talmud is a lot of work. It's Aramaic. It's not a way of thinking that we initially can relate to. And the questions are intense. And the idea is a year of that work is just incredibly valuable. And then they go into the world and they become part of the business world, the world of medicine, the world of law. They raise families, they have kids. And the impact of women who not only have knowledge but have a love of learning is enormous. I meet students 10, 20 years later, living the fullest lives imaginable, career, family, engaging in Israeli society, keeps coming back to the world of thinking and learning that she opened up at Nishmat and continues to impact them and develop within them and continues to shape their lives. Watching a student discover something really profoundly meaningful about herself, that the learning will give her language and will give her an ability to go deeper into her own sense of self, and I think also her own sense of God and her own relationship to being Jewish, to the Jewish people. To watch that happen, to watch a student grow in that way is one of the greatest pleasures of my life. I once taught Masechet Tani, which is about fast days and prayers, but on the internal question is about what does it mean to turn to God when you need something in your life. And I introduced the Masechet, and a student who looked very, very religious came to me after class and said, Rabbi, I have to tell you, I know I look one way, but I just spent 2 years on the pediatric oncology ward at such and such a hospital in my Shirut Leumi, and I'm destroyed inside. I'm falling apart religiously. Lost my sense of God with all the death that I saw. I need someone to help me find my sense of God in a world where there's so much need and so much loss. It put her challenge in front of me as a teacher that if I'm teaching what Judaism has to say about this topic, and I can reach her in the place that she is with those very same questions, then I've done something really meaningful. And the amazing thing, when you open up Masechet Ta'anit, rabbis, they're not hiding from anything. They're aware of all the questions, they're aware of the challenges. That's why they're there. Every story, every halacha, every sugya is struggling with the very questions that you would ask as a thinking, caring, spiritually searching person. The fact that the deep questions in their life are being addressed in primary sources is magical. Rabbi Henkin gave me the opportunity to teach the way that I believe in, which is that through study you really grow as a person, you become the person you really can become. You can address those existential questions in an extremely profound way. And that's something that Nishmat enabled me to do that I don't know if any other place would have been able to do. I became who I am as a teacher because I've been teaching at Nishmat, and I'm extraordinarily grateful. That's true.
It's hard to imagine that it's been more than a decade since I was learning with you at Nishmat, and to this day I'm still so grateful for everything that we learned in our classes together, and also in, the day-to-day life where you involved us as students.
Although it's been 11 years since I was in Shana Ba'aretz, I can definitely say that Rav Yoshua, you've had a lasting impression on my life. That's why I wanted you to teach me in your town before our wedding and to be our Misader Kiddushin. And when thinking about what it is about you that makes you such a mentor and role model, I think it's the combination of your wisdom and your ability to listen and to truly meet your students at wherever it is that they are in their life.
I just want to say thank you to Rav Yoshua, who always, over the past 9 years, made an effort to meet me where I was at, not just with the Torah that I needed at that time, but the mode of giving it and physically wherever it was. So whether it was Chasidut Chabura at Nishmat at 11 p.m. at night, whether it was a Google Meet Chabura before Zoom was a thing, when we were in college, whether it was getting coffee in New York or a voice note Chabura.
And it's not always so often in life that you have a sense of certainty about an experience, a sense of this is where I belong at this moment. And that feeling is really something that you cultivated.
Hi, Rav Yoshua. I remember before Nishmat even started, I was really nervous and we had a first Zoom meeting with you. And you told us to write down 3 to 5 things that, goals that we have for this year and a few things that we really want to work on. And then you told us to cut that list in half and to make the things much less exaggerated. And I don't know why, but that really, really calmed me down, knowing that I'm coming to a place with a warm environment, with so much support, with so much love.
I remember on the Tzfat trip when we were going on our Tiyul, you were talking a lot about theology and Kabbalah and mysticism and Judaism, and a lot of things that I sort of had already been thinking about but didn't think were Jewish in origin, and you were explaining all these things that I didn't realize were Jewish beliefs that I already had, and I just kept asking you questions and you just kept answering them.
I think probably my biggest thank you to you, there are so many I can say, for always being warm and supportive and available, but I think just learning from you, you're just such an incredibly fascinating teacher.
What has been most formative for me is the language that Rav Yoshua taught through his chabura and through conversations. He really gave us a language to think about God and Judaism and growth. And it's a language that me and my friends from Nishmat really still use when we're talking about, our hashkafa and our religious identity.
One of my favorite memories from my time at Nishmat with Rav Yeshua was, of course, eating with my family at his house for one of his Friday night dinners. I remember one of your children fell asleep on my father, and that was pretty cute.
And I just want to thank you for all of the wonderful guidance you shared during my year in Israel, and subsequently I go back to those memories very, very frequently. And I think in particular I want to thank you for establishing a really beautiful environment that promoted spiritual growth in all of the students.
I particularly remember being part of your tefillah group, and some of the points we discussed stick with me today and are still in sticky notes in my siddur. So thank you for enhancing my tefillah.
I really recall quite fondly all the Shabbatot Friday night dinners that we had in your apartment during our Shana B'Aretz, with endless singing that went on for so many hours, delicious salatim, and just lots of good fun and good friends, and just a really meaningful year that we had then.
And now that I'm a mom, I think about him as a father. I remember him bringing his girls for learning, and how he would take them on little dates to talk to them and get to know them as individuals. And that's something that I'm trying to start to do with my daughter now, to spend some time with her alone outside our house, and really get to know her as an individual.
I have countless memories with Rav Yeshua, and among my favorite are the moments we shared together at Barnard, when Rav Yeshua would come as part of his trip to America every year to spend the Shabbat with us, all of the Bokrot. We would throw a big Shabbaton and spend the entire Shabbat singing songs and speaking the language of Torah that we learned in Nishmat, and hearing funny stories or Hasidic stories from Rav Yeshua.
Hi Rav Yeshua, thank you so much for everything you've taught me since I was in Shana B'Aretz till today. I really appreciate it so much.
And he's also not afraid to say, hey, you know what, I don't know, let's look into that together. And that's been something so helpful for my growth over my year at Nishmat.
I remember asking certain things that had, sat in my heart for some time, and there was this feeling of like somebody gets it, somebody else sees it, somebody else hears it. I think also Rabbi Yeshua being open about his own failures or questions or struggles helped me many years later, after I'd already left Nishmat, and wasn't necessarily in a Beit Midrash setting.
I told you this before, but you were completely the Rebbe that I needed and I was looking for. Coming into Nishmat, you created such an environment of searching and authenticity and honesty, and really you brought the soul of Chassidut into our lives. Our relationship continued into my life, sitting down with my husband before we got married, and reaching out when I had a child, and our relationship with Jenny and your kids, and coming for Shabbat meals. I can't even begin to explain how grateful I am for our relationship and for having you as a source of spirituality and guidance and as a mentor in my life.